recording on that. All right, everybody's good on Facebook. Everybody's good here. All right. Tonight is Wednesday, August 30th, 2023, and this is my little Bible study, and we're continuing with our study in the book of Genesis. We're going to be picking up in chapter 39. Now, it's been just a minute since we've actually been talking about this, and here I'm going to move my glasses already, but even though I'm going to try and leave them on. But we've been talking about Joseph, right? And last time we met, we were talking the name of that little tract is From the Bottom of the Well. And really what it was kind of focusing on was the negative side of God's plan. That there's a positive side, but it's because of this negative side that all the positive is brought out. And that's just as important as the positive side. So it's just as important, like we reached three examples: Joseph and his brothers, Christ, and of course Judas. And then who was our third example? Christ and Judas, and then in the end times, it's going to be the elect and whoever's real close to them. We should understand that deceiver is very important and very intricately woven into God's plan as a part of the overall thing. By the time we get to the end of Genesis, you're going to find out God's all over everything that happened to Joseph, including his brother's betrayal, who he went to when he was sold, all these things. Now, that gets us back to Joseph himself, who was in trouble with his brothers, right? Joseph's looking at these 10 brothers from the bottom of the well in part because of his actions, all right? He's boastful. His daddy's using him to keep track of his big brothers while they're off doing stuff, all right? So he's made some genuine enemies out of his brothers. And remember, these are some of his half-brothers. The only actual blood brother he has is Benjamin, the only one that wasn't involved in selling him, right? Okay. So Joseph's there. Now, he's had two dreams, right? One, if you remember, they were binding sheaves with him and his brothers, and then all of their sheaves stood up and paid obedience to Joseph's sheaves, remember? And then the next dream was the sun and the moon and the stars, all that bowed down to Joseph, all right? So we got two dreams in a row. That kind of brings me to what we're talking about tonight, dreaming. This is about some dreamers. Now, Joseph is a big-time dreamer, right? And God is all in these dreams, all right? But how do you determine what is a dream that's from God and then what's a dream because you had some pickles and a cheeseburger before you went to bed? Because I've had some pretty convincing and scary dreams in my life. How do you determine what's from God and what's not? All right? And one of the keys is it's linking somehow to twos. Like, you think about this. Joseph has two dreams, right? One about the sheaves and the other one about the stars. The subject is the same, and you can tell that it is when you read it, but it was backed up, so it had a witness. Let me see if I can remember exactly where I was with Exodus. Let's see. How do I want to attack this? Well, let's just start off with Joseph first, and then we'll come back to this. I want to get back to the dreams. And the reason why is twos, I want you to keep that in mind. It starts with twos, and now we're going on to Joseph. There's going to be some more dreaming, and then Pharaoh's going to have some dreaming. You're going to see that these are linked or coupled together in groups of two. All right, so nothing will stand by itself. You've heard me say that before. It's repeated twice for emphasis, like within a few verses. Well, that's putting an exclamation point all over it, right? Same with dreams, right? So let's pick it up in chapter 39, verse 1. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard. So right out the back, Joseph goes from the bottom of a well to, he's in the house of one of the officers in Pharaoh and in Egypt. So that's a pretty good step for your first step right out the well, right? Right? An Egyptian bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. Verse 2, and the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And the master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. All right? So right out the bat, God is automatically prospering Joseph just right off the bat. Potiphar is the first one to come across this little gem, and he notices it right off the bat. All right? That man, don't know what's going on with this man, but everything he does is just like made out of gold. All right? Verse 4, and Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house and all that he had, and put it into his hands. So right out the way, Joseph is a slave, right into the captain of the guard, running the guy's house for him, all right? And it came to pass, from the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. All right. See, from the outside, it's going to look like the Egyptian is the one who's prosperous. And from the inside, the Egyptian even knows that it's because of what Joseph is doing. And it's because God's blessing Joseph. All right. Was upon Joseph for Joseph's sake, and the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. Verse 6, and he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had. This guy is getting so much stuff, he has no clue. Joseph's the only one who even knows what the guy owns anymore, all right? Save the bread which he did eat. So the only thing the guy's worried about is he got his food right in front of him, Joseph taking care of the rest of it, all right? Prospering, God's prospering Joseph along the way, even as a slave in Egypt, all right? And Joseph was a goodly person and wealth, whatever hold on a second. And he left all he had in Joseph's hands, and he knew not what he had, save for the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well-favored. And it came to pass, after these things, that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph. And she said, lie with me. This is probably the one thing Joseph can't do. All right, he knows it. Verse 8, and he refused and said unto his master's wife, behold, my master wrought not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee. The only thing that he can't touch, because thou art his wife. Now then, can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? See, he's not worried so much about sinning against Potiphar, even though he's done anything. His concern is don't sin against God. Why? Because it's Potiphar's wife. Joseph get his own wife, right? And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her. So this kept up. So if this was an HR department, they'd have a case here. All right? Joseph's getting sexually harassed at work, but he's holding up all on his own long before an HR department. All right? And he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business. Now remember, the thing about Egypt in ancient times, the houses were set up to where all the stores were in the back of the house. So all the pretty part was presented in the front where the owners would be, and then you have all the storerooms to the back. So Joseph has to do his daily duties, which is to keep the storehouse, has to walk through the main house every day in front of this woman who was just sexually harassing him nonstop. Because remember, Joseph's a good-looking guy, is what it said. All right? All right. And she caught him by, Joseph, okay. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. He just scooted right out, slipped right out of his coat, got out of Dodge before he get in some trouble, right? And it came to pass when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house and spake unto them, saying, see, he hath brought in a Hebrew unto us to mock us, and he came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. All of which is a lie. Just flat out. All right. Now think about this. This puts Potiphar in a bad spot. All right. He has to take the word of his wife. She's an Egyptian. Joseph is a Hebrew slave. All right? So the captain of the guard, there's no way the captain of the guard can say that, oh, I'm going to take the word of Joseph, my slave, over my Egyptian wife. All right? That'll get him that just bars him in Egyptian society. All right? So he has to take her word. But let me ask you something. I've been married before, and I'm assuming I know you have, and I know you have. All right? When you live with somebody, you know who they are.
Yes.
Do you not? You learn exactly who they are. You learn the ends. You know what they smell like. You know what the bad parts are. All right? You know all that stuff. So let me ask you, you think maybe Potiphar might know his wife is what I'm getting at, all right? So he might know a little bit more, all right? Because this should cost Joseph his life. But yet it doesn't. Listen to what happened. And it came to pass when he heard that I had lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got him out. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. So she took that garment and she laid it out right on the bed, waiting for her husband to come back, right? And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, the Hebrew servant, which thou hast brought unto us, came in unto me to mock me. Right? And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which he had to believe, all right, which she spake unto him, saying, after this manner did this servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in prison. So he goes from Potiphar's house to jail. No trial, no nothing. There ain't no due process. Take him, lock him up. All right? He's a slave. All right? But the Lord, now pay attention, the Lord was with Joseph, even in prison. All right? I remember last week when we were talking about that, even in prison, even locked behind them bars in the last days. Look out and you'll see the people that love you the most are the ones that betrayed you in the end. All right, but all of it will be necessary for the plan, because that's the thing we talked about then. That's the thing you want as a Christian. You want to be delivered before the Antichrist. Might not be called to do it, but that should be your desire, to stand against the enemy. That's the whole point of the whole Christian army idea, the whole Ephesians book about the armor and things like that, right? Oh, there's only one reason to put on armor, and that's to stand and fight. Right? And the Lord was with Joseph, and he showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Go figure. Right? And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. What do you know? As soon as Joseph shows up, he's running the place immediately, practically, right? And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. And the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, Joseph, and that which he did, and the Lord made it to prosper. So now here he got passed along again, and yet he's still playing top dog. Right? Even after the accusation from Potiphar's wife, which, like I said, I'm pretty sure Potiphar, the reason why he spares Joseph's life is because he knows his wife's a liar. All right, he knows who he's married to, but in Egyptian society, it didn't quite play the way we like to think things played. All right? But nonetheless, here you go. He's in prison, right? Let's go on to chapter 40. All right, now here we come back to dreams again. Joseph's getting back to dreaming. Yeah, we did finish 39, didn't we? I thought I was at the bottom of it. Yeah, made him to prosper. Yep, so 40. 41, verse 1. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and the baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. All right. So what we got going on here is we got a head butler and a head baker. Now, it makes it sound like this guy's running the oven for the Pharaoh. But that's not what he is. He's one of the officers of Pharaoh court. When he's in charge, when he's the baker for Pharaoh, anything that's baked goods in Egypt, he's in charge of, right? And then you have another guy, the butler. Well, he's the butler for Pharaoh, but he's not just the guy that's running Pharaoh's house. He's running all the households for Egypt. Okay, so these guys aren't just some wackadoodles, was my point, just some baker and some butler who opens and answers the door. These are officers in a royal court in Egypt. Right, the way it translates, it just doesn't translate good. They were officers of the court. No, the baker and the butler, and they messed up. But nonetheless, Pharaoh got a thief, and he knows one of them's it. All right? Verse 2, and Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers, and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. So Joseph got new prisoners, right? And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. And they continued to season in the ward. So they sat there a little bit while Pharaoh was thinking this over, right? I mean, think about that. Lock them up, let them think about what they'd done, right? Verse 5, and they dreamed a dream, both of them. All right. So we have two individuals, and each one of them going to dream a dream. All right. One dreams a dream about innocence, one dreams a dream about guilt. But just like Joseph's original two dreams, you have these two different dreams coupled together. Two different men, two different dreams, but coupled together as a group of two. All right. So keep those things in mind, because as the days go, we'll get to that as we go. Let's just continue with this. And they dreamed, both of them, each man a dream in one night. Each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. Verse 6, and Joseph came in unto them in the morning and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. 7, and he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his Lord's house, saying, wherefore look ye so sadly today? And they said unto him, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, do not interpretations belong to God? All right. Now, did Joseph just say that I can tell you what this dream means? No. He said, God can tell you what the dream means. All right. Now, tell me then, I pray you. Verse 9, and the captain and the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, in my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was taught and budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. And yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head and restore thee into thy place. And thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand after the former manner when thou wast his butler. So he's going to return you to your position in 3 days. All right? Listen to this. But think on me when it shall be well with thee. So what did he just say? Think about me. When you get returned, remember who helped you get back, is really what he's saying. Remember, I'm helping you, right? It says, but think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. I need out of this jail. All right? For indeed, I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, back in my home. All right? And here also have I done things that they should done nothing that they should put me in the dungeon. So I was stolen from my home, and I've not broken a one law in Egypt. All right? And when the chief butler saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head. Now, these baskets, the Hebrew is, they're wicker baskets, so they got holes all over them. All right? The chief baker saw the interpretation, it was good in a dream. 3 wicker baskets on my head. Verse 17, and in the utmost basket there was all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat of them out of the basket upon my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation thereof. All right? The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off of thee. All right, so here we have 2 more dreams. All right? It's 2 different people, but they're both in the same sequence. They're both dreaming a dream about the same event. So again, you have dreams that are coupled by 2s, not just one sour pickle dream. All right? You have 2 dreams, and I think if God sends you a message in a dream, he's going to have a way to get your attention with it. All right. But one of the ways then that you can start to understand that it's from God and not just the fact that you like Big Macs at 11:30 at night, all right, is by the fact that it will be coupled with someone else, with another dream, or with another person that can even help with the two of you in understanding what it even means. And all that gets facilitated by the Spirit. All right. Verse 20, and it came to pass the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all of his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants. All right. Pharaoh is going, I wouldn't do this it's his birthday. He can do what he wants. He's a Pharaoh. But he's having a trial on his birthday in front of all of his servants. All right. Now, don't tell me this wasn't to set an example, right? Because this isn't others. This is the people that work for him, right there nice, close, and tight, right? And he's going to drag out two people, and he knows one of them's a thief. And he knows now which one it is, right? And it came to pass on the third day, which Pharaoh's birthday, and he made a feast unto the servants. Oh, we did that. 21. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him. All right, so the one thing that Joseph asked for the guy to do was remember him, and it's the one thing he doesn't do, and he leaves Joseph sitting there in jail. All right, even though he's been returned exactly like the interpretation was that Joseph had given, right? All right, let's go on to 41. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years. All right, so Joseph been in prison for 2 years. All right, all because Potiphar's wife lied and said that he was trying to sleep with her. All right. So I'm just saying, some people think they got a rough life going on and got the short stick. But look, Joseph is being prospered all along the way, but yet there's some bad things that are still happening to Joseph, right? He's being accused of adultery with a married woman. He's stuck in prison. The people that he helped forgetting that he even exists. But yet God's still with him, all right? So you can, it's just whether you're a half full or half empty kind of a guy, I guess, is what it depends. I'm betting Joseph he was probably still realized that he had a purpose. I'm guessing is the best thing to put for it. But anyway, but it came after 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. So now we got Pharaoh having dreams. Like I said, Joseph's a dreamer, right? Verse 2, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine, all right, and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine, or 7 other cows, came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, all right, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and the lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored kine and fat. And so Pharaoh awoke. So he had a dream that kind of messed him up a little bit. So he wakes up. And he slept and dreamed a second time. So here we go. Here we got 2 dreams right in a row. All right. All right. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up out of a stalk, rank and good. They were nice, big, pretty hairs of corn. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank full ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So now he's had 2 dreams back to back. All right, fits in the scenario of what God's using this as a dream, right? Right. The subject matter is the same. The symbols are a little bit different, but the subject matter appears to be the same. It's the same. You have thin and fat. All right, and in both cases, the thin ears eat up the fat ones, but yet don't gain any weight. All right. Verse 8, and it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh took them and told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. So this man, Okay, he got excited. He forgot about Joseph. But the first thing he does when he remembers is that, wait a minute, I messed up. I was supposed to tell you about this guy. Right? But yeah, I remember my false estate. 10, Pharaoh was wroth with his servants and put them in the ward and the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he, and we dreamed each man according to an interpretation of the dream. And there was there a young man, a Hebrew, servant of the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream did he interpret. Verse 13, and it came to pass, as he had interpreted to us, so it was, me he restored to mine office, and him he hanged. All right, so he got it just right. And Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and shaved him, and changed his raiment, and he came into Pharaoh. So he was probably having a pretty rough time down in there, all right? So they cleaned him up real quick and throw him out in front of the boss, all right? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream and interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. I can't do it. All right? God shall give Pharaoh the answer of peace. Verse 17, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, in my dream, behold, I stood upon the brink of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up out after them, poor and very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I've never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them. So they were still skinny, right? But they were still ill-favored as in the beginning, and so I woke. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up on one stalk, full and good. But behold, 7 ears withered thin and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. So each dream, again 2, all right, it's all about the same thing. And that's exactly what we've been seeing. That 2 dreams, all on the same subject, but with a little bit different kind of symbols used. But still, you can clearly see a logical pattern within the symbology even of it, right? Yeah. The dream of Pharaoh one God. Okay, yeah, verse 26. And the 7 good kine are 7. Okay, here's the interpretation, all right? The verse 26, I think, where we are. The 7 good kine are 7 years. And the 7 good ears are 7 years, because it's the same thing. The dream is one, and the 7 thin ears, and the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. So here we have 2 dreams that are predicting 7 years of prosperity, followed by 7 years of extreme famine. All right? This is the thing which I spoke unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showed unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine. And all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of the famine following, for it shall be a very grievous. All right, so he's saying you got 7 years that are good, but after that, buddy, we're wiping it. It's going to get wiped out. All right? And for that dream, the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. See, did it twice. It is because the thing is established by God and God will shortly bring it to pass. So that's exactly what he's saying. He's saying you had 2 dreams in a row. This is established by God. So that's why I keep hitting on the 2. So if you ever think God is speaking to you in dreams, remember that. Because it can help determine between that and maybe you should seek a doctor. Right? Because how many times, I'm not making light of God's spirit or mental illness. Neither one of them. But we've all seen what happens with mentally ill people talking about these things. It's nothing that, but use that as a guideline with your own self to help you determine what it is. All right. But either way, that's what it said. And for that, the dream was doubled upon Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. All right. Now, and we're going to get back to that in just a minute. And now, therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over all the land, over all Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up 1/5 part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. So Joseph's hashing a plan right here already. All right? So, well, you got 7 good ones. We're going to set out officers, and we're going to gather in 1/5 of everything during the plenteous years. All right? We're going to store it up. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, and the land perish not through the famine. So here we have a plan, right? Verse 37, and the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all of his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, come find such as one, as this is, a man of whom the Spirit of God is. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. All right? So here, Joseph's finally getting his comeuppance from being patient with the captain of the guard, working hard in Potiphar, for working for the prisoner, the captain of the guard, all right, and in prison. All right, so now he's getting there. Pharaoh's recognizing him now. Verse 40, thou shalt be over my house, and according unto my word shall all people be ruled. Unto thy word shall all people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. So that's right behind Pharaoh. This dude's a slave. All right? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vesture of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck, and made him to ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried before him, bowed the knee, and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up thy hand or thy foot in all the land of Egypt. I mean, that is a big statement. Pharaoh just looking right at him and telling him, this is your ball game. Take care of it. There's none wiser than you, Joseph. So go for it. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Japhanep, you do it. And he gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Yahim, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Now, you got to realize, right here you're going to think Joseph's marrying an Egyptian, but you got to remember the time when they're in. All right, this is before what we understand Egypt. Egypt, you know, to Pharaoh's headdress, if you look at it, it's 2 distinct calves to it, right? All right, well, that symbolizes the uniting of the ancient southern kingdom of Egypt and the northern kingdom of Egypt. That's where the Pharaoh was born, was in the uniting of the upper and lower Egypt is what it's called. Now, In the southern kingdom, it's the Hyksos. These are Adamic people that are sheep herders that are in the southern kingdom. And it's in the northern kingdom, past the Nile and the Egyptian, the pyramids is where the pharaoh, this Old Testament pharaohs are. All right, so people think that he married an Egyptian, but really he's married just one of the Hyksos, part of the ones that are part of the shepherd kings from the southern kingdom is really what it is. Probably another slave, even though it's a priest, called a priest. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But verse 46, and Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food for the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, and the food in the fields, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until he left numbering, until he couldn't count anymore, right? For it was without number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of the famine, with Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore unto him. Joseph called the name of the first Manasseh, for God said, he had made me forget all of my toil and all of my father's house. And the name of the second was Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenteous that was in the land of Egypt was ended. The 7 years of death began to come, according to Joseph, as he had said. And the drought, I said death, but anyway, and the drought was in all the lands, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, go to Joseph, what he said unto you do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses, and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore into the land of Egypt. And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph to buy corn, because the famine was so sore in all the land. All right, so now if you think back, you all the way back to Esau. Remember, Esau went hunting, right, and he couldn't get anything. So even as far back as Esau, this famine was probably starting, because that's why he couldn't catch no grain. Now, this famine is historical. It's been documented. It's all in Egypt. It's all through Egyptian history about this big famine. There's also a canal that was built during antiquity that's still in use to this day, that's still to this day called the Canal of Joseph. And most people believe that it is actually the canal that Joseph built to help ward this famine in Egypt. All right, now we just cranked out about 3 chapters, all right? I don't want to lose this idea about dreaming, all right? So I want to back this up just a little bit, okay? Coming in pairs of 2s. The first question I want to answer, is dreaming a valid way for God to communicate with people in the New Testament era? Or the end of days, whichever one you want to look to, because that's what we're in. All right? And the answer to that is in Acts chapter 2. So flip over to Acts chapter 2. We're going to look at verse 17 through 21 real quick. There's a couple things I want to hit on just before we close. Acts chapter 2, what did I say? 17 through 21? Yeah. Yes. We'll wait for Eunice for just a second. We're taking a short siesta while somebody's in the bathroom. She'll be right back.
What chapter we at?
Chapter 2, verse 17 through 21 is what we're going to hit. Acts. Book of Acts. I don't know how to say it in Marshallese. I have no idea. Acts chapter 2, verse 17 through 21. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and start. She'll catch right back up. All right, so what I want to answer is, in the last days, should we expect visions and dreaming? All right, so let's see what the book of Acts actually says about it. And chapter 2, verse 17. And it shall come to pass in the last days. So that sets our time element right out the gate. So we know we're talking about the times that we live, right? Saith God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. All right, so here we are at the last days here in the book of Acts in chapter 2, and it clearly says that the young men will start having visions again, and the old men are going to dream dreams. Now, why old men dreaming dreams? Well, think about Joseph. Remember when, think about Jacob. When Joseph has his second dream, Joseph does what? He's not done like the other boys, mad. He stops and he considers it. Yeah, Acts chapter 2. 17, 1 through 21. But Joseph, when he's talking about the dreams, his sons are mad, but Joseph, what does he do? He considers what Joseph said because he's older, he's a little bit wiser. All right, he knows this is 2 dreams in a row, too. So Joseph's probably already on to that. All right? So clearly it says that you'll start seeing dreams. So now we understand that groups of 2 in the last days, that's what you should be looking for if you want some kind of verifiable proof of where the dream comes from, right? And on my servants and on my handmaids I will pour out in those days of my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in heaven above and signs in earth below, blood, fire, vapor, and smoke. And the sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon into blood before the great and notable day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Okay, so here we have the great and notable day of the Lord. That's the 7th trumpet, right? All right, so before that, we're going to see darkness. You see what it says here? The sun shall be turned to darkness. Flip over to Revelation chapter 16. I want to back this up. So since we're talking about the last days, the premier book for the last days, the book of Revelation. All right, so Revelation chapter 16, and we're going to pick it up in verse 8. We're going to look at a couple seals here real quick. All right. Now, to help isolate the time exactly where we are, this is the 4th angel pouring out their cup or their vial of wrath in chapter 16:8. All right. And we're talking about now, we're following dreams and then darkness has been thrown at us, all right? And the 4th angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. So you think this little heat wave might be related to some of this stuff? All right, world heat records being shattered all over the world. All right, it just might be this vial. All right, and the men were scorched with great heat and blasphemed the name of God, which hath power over the plagues, and they repented not to give him the glory. And the 5th angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, right? And they gnawed their tongues for pain. Now, we just were in the book of Exodus not too long ago. Do you remember what the 9th plague is? All right. Now, the reason I followed this is we were talking about dreaming, right? And then it started getting a reference in Acts to just before the day of the Lord, darkness, all right? And then here again in the book of Revelation, here at the 5th angel, when he pulls out his vial upon the seat of the beast, now that means they're in Jerusalem is what we're talking about, because that's where the seat of the beast will be at that time. That's where the Antichrist sets up shop. That's where he rules the world from. All right? So if you want to remember what that is, switch back over to Exodus then. We're just about done, I promise. This is the last stop we're going to go, and I'll wind it up. Exodus, what did I say, chapter 10? Yeah. Chapter 10, verse 21. All right. Dreams and darkness. Here we go. I just wanted to show you that this applies, this Old Testament stuff all applies directly to the book of Revelation, right? So book of Acts, talking about the last days, darkness being poured out upon the earth. You got the book of Revelation, also darkness being pulled out on the kingdom of the seat of the beast, right? Listen to what it says in Exodus chapter 10, verse 21. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt. All right, even darkness which may be felt. So when it says darkness pulled out in the last days, this ain't some metaphorical speech about how the Antichrist is just having dark power over the earth. This is a literal plague out of the book of Egypt. Okay, so keep that in mind. Because that darkness that it's talking about is this darkness that's here. All right? Verse 22, and Moses stretched out his hand toward heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. And they saw not one another, neither rose any from their place for 3 days. All right, that's all of Egypt. But what does it say next? But the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. All right, so they could still see. So those people during this plague that don't bear the mark of the beast will be able to see just fine during that time of darkness. All right, that's just one of those plagues. I just wanted to tie all this stuff because people sometimes lose focus on the Old Testament. All right, but that with the book of Genesis we were just in, teaching you how do you discern the difference between sour pickle dreams and what God wants you to know. All right, turn around, you start following that around, you start finding about darkness and the books that deal with the apocalypse in the last days, and all that's nothing but one of the plagues out of the book of Egypt. All right, so all that stuff in the Old Testament, let's just say, all that stuff is given for an ensample for those in the last days, so they will know what will befall them in the last days. So here you go. You got dreams, and you got this darkness coming on. Just saying, keep your eyes open, because when you see this going down, all right, everybody's going to be talking about it, so just know what it has to do with. All right, that's it. We got through 3 chapters tonight for Genesis. We got a little bit of extra talking about dreaming and darkness and all that good stuff. All right, we'll catch you next week. You guys have a good night.